Hello and welcome to the Blue Pencil session. This is where those of us at the Creative Academy take a look at your initial pages and give you our thoughts. I'm Eileen Cook. I'm here with my colleagues, Crystal and Donna. Sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't. So today we're taking a look at a piece from Ieva Wool. It's an untitled fantasy novel, and she has let us know that we're starting about a third of the way in when she's introducing a new character. So I'm wondering if either of you wanted to sort of jump in with sort of your impressions of this piece.
I'll jump in. So I don't know anything about this story, and we've got 800 words, and I was right into the story. So I loved the thing that struck me most, I guess, were word choices. As I was reading along, I was like really being pulled into this world because of just really lovely, thoughtful word choices. Things like, scarpers. That was one that I could. I've never heard it before, but I can totally imagine what it means, and it made me happy. A little thing like an action, hopping and dancing around and singing his happy song. That also, they're not hard words, but it evoked such great, like it was evocative. And then there are other places as well. So my overall impression is great scene setting. I'm getting pulled in, and a third of the way into the story, wow, like well done, getting me pulled in way into the story.
I also commented quite a bit on the word choices, and also that there's a lot of action happening in this piece. So things are transpiring. So we're seeing the main character, it opens with him basically trying to capture this rabbit, and it moves through all the way up to and including an earthquake. So there's certainly plenty that's going on. So I think pacing wise that's going to work pretty well. My biggest issue is just having some questions, and I am always a little tentative because I do know we're a third of the way through this. But for example, early in this piece, he finds these sort of sparkling rocks, and he gets really excited, and it's like, this is the best find ever. And I wasn't certain, like, if this is something that we already know in the world, that these things have value, or if he's just, what makes him so sure that these particular things are such a great find versus they're just sparkly and kind of fun. And I love me a good sparkly rock, so I don't mind him for that, but just questioning. And then sort of similar to that is it talks about a little further down that he has no friends. The children of the village used to throw sticks, but now they mostly ignore him. And well, one, that made me sad, but it does sort of, make him an interesting and compelling character because I'm curious why that happens and what's going on for him. But I don't actually understand why. Like, what is it about him that makes him such an outsider? And that's, for me, an example of the kind of questions that I had.
Yeah, for sure. I also highlighted that same part. I really loved the sentence or two that prefaces that section where he moons over Sula, her shiny black pebble eyes and the endearing gap between her front teeth, and the time she hugged him when he gave her a rabbit, but her father beat him afterwards and told him to stay away. They kept the rabbit though. Like, it's just such an interesting commentary on sort of the kind of things he's clearly thinking about and how his mind works. And it says a lot about the society where they're living as well, and the sort of culture of that. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. And there are so many questions that come out of that.
Well, and I think that's a great thing of really putting us really firmly in his point of view. Like when we talk about, again, sort of how he sees Sula, as well as like, but they kept the rabbit though. I just love that line. But Crystal, you found a spot where we sort of jump out of his point of view. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah. When we get a little further, he goes home, he has his supper with his father, I guess, and then we hop out, and it's that night the mountain shakes. Then again, it roars and wakens the villagers, who crawl out of their huts sleepy and confused. It shakes again, and there's a couple more lines along that line. And then we go back into Minason, I'm not sure how you say that name, but we go back into his point of view. But it seems like that's a really big missed opportunity where we could be with him experiencing this ground shaking horrific event. Clearly
timed.
which, as you can imagine, and has been clearly demonstrated by Cairo and Gimlet in the background, that would like shock you, scare you, get your attention. You'd be right on up in that. So I think that is a really big opportunity for us just to be in his head still, like stick with that point of view and feel what he's feeling and see what he's seeing, because I'm guessing, just flat out guessing, that it's a co-sleeping, like it'd be a pretty tight kind of arrangement if people are catching rabbits for their dinner and, living rough or whatever you'd call that, then it seems likely that he would be in a good position to observe the people around him and how they were reacting to this change and this shakeup as well.
I wanted, and I yay. So one thing that I think that might help me with too is the one question that I was left with comes more towards the end. So we do know that he's been shunned by the other kids. We know that what was the girl's name? Sula. That her dad cuffs him. That his own father cuffs him when he brings the rabbit home because he's late. So I'm building empathy for him. And we get to the very end, and when he finds that his cave has been demolished, he scrambles to his feet and runs in circles, howling and slapping his arms and sides. And at that point, I was lost. You lost me, because even though I have that empathy for him, or that feeling of I feel for him, I can't picture what he looks like. I can't picture how old he is. I can't even tell if he's human or only humanoid. And I just need to know a little bit more about him to fully feel what he's feeling. And I really want to fully feel what he's feeling at this point, because this is clearly quite traumatic for him. So that was my only stumbling spot, was at that place.
That was a spot where I actually wondered if he might be on the autism spectrum. Just having seen that behavior in some friends' children. And that was actually where I had that twinge of like, I wonder if that's what makes him stand apart from the other kids in the village. And again, we have such a small context, it's sort of hard to know. But it is, like a big reaction to that kind of thing. And it's that thing of then kind of wanting to have a better idea of, is this something that happens to him a lot, or that kind of perspective, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was sort of the impression I got as well, actually, was that whether it's that he's not verbal at all, like that, because there isn't any talking around this really, and he's not talking about how he spoke with Sula or, is going to talk to her. It's very much like symbolic gestures, like he's giving her a present, which gets him in trouble, and that ostracization from the other kids, and the fact that he sketches, and it's his sketches and these collections of treasures. And I just assumed that the cave was his only real safe place that had kind of all the things that he valued in it, and so that was like everything that was important to him, that had kind of been wiped out. One question I'm now really curious about is the way that the rock is described that he finds. The rocks are like as big as the rabbit, but quite light. And so immediately I'm like, ooh, dragon eggs, because that's just where I go with thoughts, like really light rocks that are turquoise and glowy. Yeah, but I was really curious, sort of at the end of the piece, we come back and he's mesmerized by these glowing rocks that are all that's left after this earthquake kind of takes out his whole cave. And he's having this daydream of flying, soaring, riding the thermals as he's watched falcons and ravens do, and then eventually sinking down to the ground and sleeping. And I guess that's the point, is you're leaving us hanging, and yes, we want to read the next chapter because we need to know what's going on here. There wasn't a sense of if he was really dreaming or if he was capable of that, or like there's just so much context that we're I guess missing here. But the good news is definitely we want to know more.
Yeah, I wondered, and as I was reading through when the earthquake started, I wondered if these super special rocks and him moving them had somehow created this. Like, I'm not, like, so that was one of the things going on in the back of my mind was, did his disturbing those 4 rocks actually contribute to this? So yeah, there's a lot about the world that we don't know.
Yeah. My only question that was kind of there at the end is, there's been this big earthquake. It's caused this huge disruption that no one in the village, including his father, is looking for him, right? Like he's kind of run off to this cave area. And again, that probably doesn't need to be in this section, but I would be wondering, like, or it tells us a lot about where his status is if no one cares that he's gone missing in this kind of crisis situation. But overall, I think really solid piece, action, pacing's moving well. There isn't a lot of dialogue, which I think Crystal raised an interesting issue. Is it's possible that he's nonverbal, which I think is kind of intriguing and interesting how you're going to do that. But I think you've done the biggest thing, Eva, which is I would for certain be reading more.
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for sharing, Eva. We very much appreciate it. We hope that maybe we get to see a little bit more at a later time. And for everyone else, just a reminder that we'd love to take a peek at your pages too. So submit those to the blue pencil and we'll be happy to do that. See you around the Academy.